The Broncos versus the Falcons is the most underrated game that nobody's talking about for week 11 of the NFL season, because you got two teams where the question that you're asking is, are you good, or are you only taking advantage of the weaker teams that you play on your schedule? Because the Denver Broncos are 0-4 this year against teams with winning records. And the Atlanta Falcons, they're 1-2 against teams this year that have records above 500. Yeah, they beat the Philadelphia Eagles, but they lost to the Steelers and they lost to the Chiefs. You have two teams where it still is hard to gauge just how truly good they are. We know that the Falcons are going to be a playoff team, but how far can they go in the playoffs? We really don't know. And the Denver Broncos, certain weeks when you watch them, you think they can be a playoff team, but then they struggle at being able to beat some of the elite teams in the AFC. So this is a game where you got pretty much two evenly matched football teams that are playoff caliber. They're not more so like elite, but they're really good teams. And for the Denver Broncos, you know, if you can beat Atlanta, it shows that you can at least beat the average to above average teams that you have to play on your schedule. Like, you can beat a team like the Chargers when you play them again if you can beat Atlanta. And for Atlanta, if you can beat the Denver Broncos, then it shows that you're able to win games that are a little bit of a dogfight. Because one thing that I've noticed about the Falcons this year is that a lot of their wins come in high-scoring games. But I want to know, can the Falcons win a 14-10 defensive slugfest? Because we saw them lose that kind of game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Bo Nix has started to heat up as of late. His last 6 games, he's thrown 9 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions. Against Kansas City, he absolutely surprised me. And be honest, he probably surprised y'all too. Most of us were not expecting Bo Nix to play as well as what he did against the Chiefs. He completed 73% of his passes, 2 touchdowns for 215 yards passing, and no interceptions. And with how well Bo Nix played, you were really confident that the Broncos were going to win that game, but the Chiefs just have some black magic around them that doesn't allow them to lose. And the Falcons' defense has been their Achilles heel this year. This is average to below average defense. Many Falcons fans have been calling for them to make a change at defensive coordinator with Jimmy Lake, because your defense is 20th against the run, which we know the Broncos like to run the football a lot, and they're 24th against the pass. And they also are the worst team in the NFL at getting after the quarterback. They're 32nd in sacks per game. So you look at how well the Broncos have played offensively in their last couple of games, not including against the Baltimore Ravens, because the Ravens are just an outright more talented team than Denver. You know, the Atlanta Falcons defense is going to get challenged in this game. And if they get torched by Bo Nix, I don't think the Falcons can make a deep playoff run. I know a few weeks ago I came on here and said that the Falcons could be a little bit of a sleeper team, but it's like, once you get deeper into the playoffs, you got to have somewhat of a defense that can come through in big moments. And the Falcons do have some good players on defense. You do have Jesse Bates, who's the best safety in the league, in my opinion. You do got A.J. Terrell, who's having a great season. And Matthew Judon, he looked pretty good for the first couple of weeks. What's happened to him? What's happened to the pass rush? You know, this defense just overall isn't dependable when you go up against teams that have somewhat competent quarterback play, which is why you have a Falcons team that's been 5-2 against teams below 500. You swept the Bucs. They aren't doing so good right now. You beat the Panthers, and you split with the Saints when really you would have won that game if your field goal kicker knew how to kick the ball. So with the next 3 weeks that the Atlanta Falcons have to go up against not just the Broncos this week, but the Chargers and the Vikings coming up, this is going to be the stretch that defines what this team is going to be once we get into the month of December and we prepare for postseason football, because the Falcons are going to be a playoff team. I don't see the Buccaneers being able to rally and turn their season around. I think they probably are going to be more so a 7-8 win team. The Falcons probably should be a 10-win team. But the same issue that the Falcons have, struggling against teams that are above 500, is the same problem the Broncos have. The Broncos, nearly all their wins, as a matter of fact, all their wins have come against teams with losing records. The Panthers, the Saints, the Raiders, the Jets. You got to be able to beat a team like Atlanta if you want to be a playoff team, because you're not going to make it to the playoffs just beating up bottom feeders. You could end up missing out on the 7th seed and you finish 9-8 because you are unable to beat a quality team like Atlanta. Atlanta is not Baltimore. It's unfair to try to use that Baltimore game as justification for what the Broncos are, because we know that game's a mismatch. However, this game against the Falcons is an even game to me, because you got one team that has a high-powered offense with Kirk Cousins, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London, and you got a Broncos defense that's been one of the biggest surprises in the NFL. And Bo Nix, if he continues to play the way he has these last couple of games against Atlanta, I believe the Broncos walk away with this win. And I had one of my homies who does a lot of sports betting. He asked me, JT, you should talk about why Vegas has the Broncos as a favorite in this game. And I said, that's a good point, because when I first was looking at this game a few days ago, I thought that the Falcons would be favored because I felt like the Falcons, from a talent standpoint, had the better team. But even though the Falcons are more talented, the Broncos are a more complete team than what the Falcons are. Yes, their offense isn't as good as what Atlanta's is. And if this is a game that ends up becoming a shootout and the Falcons end up getting a 30, the Broncos are going to lose, because the Broncos are not a team that is built to win games that end up being high scoring, just because, you know, the more you ask Bo Nix to throw the football, the higher chance you're going to have of him throwing the interception. It's one thing to go 22 or 30. It's another thing when you're asking a guy that have to throw 35, 40 times to keep up with this Falcons offense, because eventually he's going to make a mistake or two. If the Broncos are going to win this game, they're going to have to keep this thing relatively low scoring. Anytime the Falcons get in low scoring games and they got to rely on their defense, they get in trouble. The Falcons want to win games by being able to just overpower you with their firepower on offense, which could happen, but I don't really know, because I do believe that this is a Broncos defense that's more than capable of being able to slow down this Falcons offense. The last time the Falcons went against a defense as good as what the Broncos is was week 1 against the Steelers, and we saw Kirk Cousins struggle in that game. And Vance Joseph, he's been sending a lot of pressure this year. When you can get after Kirk Cousins, you know he's not the most mobile guy in the world, he can get himself in trouble. And Kirk Cousins is also a guy who at times he can unravel in certain situations, like we saw him do against New Orleans. He did throw a couple of picks in that game that cost them to lose that one as well. So I like the Broncos to win this one, which is a little bit surprising because I was kind of leaning Atlanta. But the more I think about it, the more I talk myself into it, I like the Broncos to win because they just are a more complete team. And from what we've seen out of Atlanta, if every game isn't a high-scoring affair, if every game they play isn't a high-scoring affair, then their chances of winning greatly diminish, because they're not a team that can win with their defense, because their defense is not really that dependable. The only reason why the Broncos won't be able to score a lot of points is just because of the style of their offense. You know, they're more so of a ball control offense. They want to get the ball out fast, and they pick and choose when they like to attack the field vertically. But most of the times they want to run the football. And when you're a team that has that run-first approach, most of your games are not going to be shootouts. And just with Bo Nix being so up and down as a rookie, you know, like, there's going to be some moments where you ask him to throw it a little bit more than what you have over these last couple of weeks, and he ends up throwing an interception to Jesse Bates. But overall, I like the Broncos to win just because I believe with how well their defense has played and how hot Bo Nix has been these last couple of weeks, they're going to be able to play the style of football that they want to play, keeping this a low-scoring game, focusing on ball control, letting their defense do more stuff, the heavy lifting for them. And I can see the Broncos winning this thing 19-14, 19-17. This is going to be a close game no matter what. But I do like the Broncos to win this one with how good their defense is.